Gray Zone Warfare has put out more info, so I'm going to go over the gameplay aspects of it and try to peel back what it all means. Let's get at it. Alright, I'd like to start off by saying I'm going to try and concisely cover the gameplay aspects of this new information, and I'm going to stick to the parts that seem more solidly decided. As before, when I say we know, what I mean is it's something the devs have stated outright with little to no ambiguity or shown in-game and or to be their intention. Whether they deliver on these intentions, time will tell. If you're interested in other aspects of the game, like the lore, the technical parts of the game, and anti-cheats, etc., I highly recommend checking out Riloe Gaming's channel. He puts out some really good videos, give him a shot. With all that out of the way, let's start off with what I think is the biggest news drop, that in early access, Gray Zone Warfare will have a PvE only option that is separate from its PvP enabled mode. As I've discussed here before, extraction style games, of which Gray Zone Warfare can loosely be classified under, have always had a portion of their communities asking for a PvE only mode. For various reasons, I've argued why this isn't something that could work. However, we have enough details to suggest Gray Zone Warfare is doing things differently enough to maybe make this happen, but they also raise new questions that need answers. For starters, we know the progression system is tied to your account, so changing servers will not wipe your progress. However, there isn't currently any info on whether this applies when changing from PvE to PvP. Now, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to move forward with an assumption in mind. And that assumption is that progress made in PvE only modes will not transfer to the PvP enabled mode. If it did, there would be very little incentive to quest and go through the campaign in a PvP enabled mode while turning the PvP mode into a deathmatch fest. Given what we know, I do not think this is Madfinger's game's goal. So I'm going to assume this because it would be a non-starter for this kind of game, and I do not have a reason to believe the devs do not know what they're doing. The first question I have regarding the PvE only mode is, will other PMC factions be on the map as well? I can easily see rival PMC members running across one another and trying to kill each other regardless if it's PvE only. Will I be completely unable to do damage? Will I be able to mag dump somebody and they don't go down? For the immersion that's being built into this game, this would do a pretty good job of killing it. And if there are ways for players to grief their way around this, you can bet it will happen. The two biggest hurdles for games that are relying on PvE to generate the majority of your interactions is that first, there's never enough content to substitute what PvP can offer, and second, no AI can truly match the unpredictability a person can. However, the structure of the AI, the map, and the servers make me believe that Gray Zone Warfare might have found a way to at least come pretty close. For starters, the AI is going to be multi-dimensional. They will have their own factions with their own tasks to complete, non-standard patrol routes, and adaptive emotional responses to evolving situations. For example, if you've just finished killing a bunch of them, the remainder will opt to not continue to charge you and act more defensively. You will also have some kind of reputation system with NPC factions that may make your interactions with them more variable. And what's not planned for early access is also telling. There will be strongholds that are capturable that may unlock traders in the field, more on that later. Nighttime will drastically change AI behavior outside of just not being able to see as well. Sleep patterns, locations, different paths, etc. There will also be drastic weather effects that flood portions of the map that not only affect your available options but will alter AI behavior and pathing. And then there are the server setups. For starters, the early access of Gray Zone Warfare intends to be a game where you just hit play to queue up and get sent to a server. However, the devs have stated they are definitely planning on having a server browser option and player-rented custom servers. Before we even get into the PvP, there is a lot of potential to be had here. The AI and map setup looks to be erratic enough to add a lot of replayability. The possibility for player-rented custom servers is huge for this as well. I can easily see a group of friends or a community putting together a custom server with events, adding their own flair to the game. I know there will be many more players interested in Gray Zone Warfare with all this being said, and even if the PvE only mode doesn't interest you, the fact that there's going to be this much going on along with the PvP is very exciting. Now before we move on to PvP and other info, if you've made it this far, chances are I'm entertaining you. You should consider subscribing. I appreciate your consideration, and now back to the video. The FOB area, while considered the quote safe zone, isn't 100% safe. Opposing PMCs can attempt to assault enemy FOBs, but it also is so well defended that it is basically considered suicide. When you put it in those terms, the FOB is effectively a safe zone no matter how you dress it up. With early access, the FOB area will have friendly fire disabled, but in the future this will not be the case. Gray Zone Warfare is looking to have a karma system in place. If you accidentally kill a member of your own PMC faction, that player can choose to forgive you or report you, and not to the servers, but to the PMC faction. With enough negative karma, you could be booted out of the PMC and be considered a rogue. We don't have a lot of solid info on what that looks like so far, so use your imagination. I know there are a lot of ways you can tweak this, so maybe I'm jumping the gun on this, but I will say this one thing. I have serious reservations on this plan setup. I think the devs have seriously underestimated how willing and determined players can be when griefing other players. It will feel super horrible to be kitted out in your FOB, getting ready for a mission to only be gunned down by some guy and his buddies looking to make your day worse. And that's not even considering the much more likely event of players reporting other PMCs who killed them when contact was sudden and they were just reacting. Out of spite, I can see them instantly hitting that report button. In private servers, I can see these things being less of an issue, but in public games, I can already see serious problems arising. Time will tell how this turns out. The progression is not all that dissimilar from other extraction shooters as well. You gain XP and you unlock better gear, but you also have a reputation system on how the trader views you. That potentially lays the groundwork for more replayability. The leveling of your character with skills is something unique, as you cannot simply grind an XP bar. You will have to perform specific actions with a certain degree of skill in order to get quote certified with the corresponding skill level that brings buffs to your character. From what we know, your personal skill level will play a big part in how high of a level you will start off with. If you're good enough at that task, you might just skip levels of progression and gain the corresponding buffs. An additional thing that we found out is that if you die, your gear will remain on the map for 1 hour. This statement has some presumptions built into it. So, the first one is when you die, you do not get moved to a different server. You respawn, and you likely have the potential to get back to the location of your gear. Now, depending on how the LZs work, your squad can win the fight and wait for you to get back to that location. Now, on the flip side of that, if you just had a PvP encounter and got wiped, so long as you killed at least 1 to 2 players, there's a decent chance you're going to know where the enemy squad is, or at least where to start looking. Another PvP consideration is that while not being part of the early access, the PvE capturable strongholds have the potential to be much of the PvP conflict zones. Since you need to have them captured for certain traders to be available, I can easily see PMC factions vying for control and coming into conflict. I can even see a really fun setup where you radioed for help from a local stronghold that you control and you QRF to engage the other PMC faction. But that's just an idea I came up with. I have no indications Gray Zone Warfare would have that. As far as we know, GPS devices will not be in early access, but will make their way into the game in the future. I hope Gray Zone Warfare will give us tools to coordinate and communicate with other members of our PMC faction outside of our squad. Perhaps radio channels that we can use, or at the very least a message board on our FOB. Otherwise, from what we know, the current setup sounds a lot like they're actively discouraging PvP because of the negative impact you'll potentially face for killing your PMC faction members. It should be stated here that the devs are fine with making it very hard to tell the difference between PMC faction members. I would hope with a PvE only mode as an option, they could do more to incentivize PvP when it's enabled. The alternative would be to rely on custom servers to increase the incentives, which would be disappointing. Even with that said, despite the fact that there are clear overlaps with games like Tarkov, Squad, Arma, and DayZ, Gray Zone Warfare looks to be forging a path of its own. But will that path lead them to success? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. If you enjoyed this video, I ask that you consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Thank you for watching, and good hunting.